I've flown Chicago to Mumbai and back a dozen times. And I've flown all around the world, but always economy. Business class was just too expensive. Then recently, when I was flying back from Mumbai, as I was boarding the plane, I got unexpectedly upgraded to business class. And that experience changed everything because it was just so much fun. But it was still too expensive. So on my recent flight to India from Chicago, I actually found a really good deal on kayak through a website called Indian Eagle for Turkish Airlines business class for around $2,700, which is less than half of what it usually costs on other airlines. And well, I thought to myself, maybe it's not really legit. Maybe it's a great deal. So I bought the ticket, and this video is about what I experienced. And, did the whole business class experience on Turkish Airlines stack up to what I experienced on Lufthansa? Were the lounges nice? Was the hospitality and the food nice? Or was it all just a scam, right? I'm going to answer that question in this video, but there's a spoiler. There are a couple of things that didn't go as planned, and it wasn't really the airline's fault. Let's talk a little bit about booking the flight. So I found this deal on kayak, and it was through a travel agency called Indian Eagle. And I was skeptical at first because it was only $2,700 compared to $6,500 for most of the other airlines. And at the same time, it was much more than how much I would usually pay for economy, which was around $900 for the same flight at the same time. So it was a lot of money to spend, but it was still much cheaper than what business class usually costs. But when I booked it, it was legit because I could see the flight on Turkish Airlines. I even called them and confirmed it was not a code share with another airline. But there was something a little bit odd about the app. The app kept telling me about the fact that there was not going to be Wi-Fi on code share flights with Indigo. My boarding passes didn't say that there was Indigo, but the display at the gate said that it was a code share with Indigo. So that was kind of confusing to me. But there was no Indigo staff on the plane. There was no branding of Indigo. And I had Wi-Fi on all four legs of my flight. And in each case, the Wi-Fi worked great, but with just one caveat that the 1 GB of data can get over pretty quickly if you don't turn on low power mode, which I accidentally forgot to do on one of my legs, and it got over in like 30 minutes. And another weird thing about the booking process is that the app demanded a second phone number when I was checking in. I didn't have a second phone number, so I just put my primary phone number twice. The check-in at Chicago O'Hare was smooth. There was a separate line and a friendly agent. When I got to TSA pre-check, it was a really quick process. I just walked straight through. And as soon as I got to security, I made a beeline for the Polaris lounge. That lounge happened to be right next to my gate, so I could stay there until I felt the boarding was going to begin. At the lounge, it was serene and peaceful. There weren't too many people, and the vibes were good. There was good food, good coffee, overall very pleasant experience. And when I got to the gate, which I said was really close to the lounge, what's awesome about business class is you get to board first. And when you board the plane, there's hardly anybody in business class because it's a very small part of the plane. So you don't have to walk very far. You just board the plane and you're right at your seat. And then there's plenty of time to store bags and unpack your cables and adapters and things like that and get settled. There's no fighting for overhead space because every seat gets 2 carry-on bags. And once you sit down, the crew comes over with a tray of drinks, including some really interesting raspberry type of a drink, and then a green drink that has avocado and apple and kiwi in it. Basically these really interesting drinks that you can get. There's lemonade as well. And then you sip this drink, sit in your chair, and all this time economy is boarding the plane, right? And then when the plane's about to take off, they come and collect those glasses from you and they make you get ready for takeoff. And while this is going on, while you're sipping your food, you see these people come over and they've got the chef's hat on. They call themselves sky chefs, right? And they take your meal orders for you, for your main course. And they give you a menu that you can look at while waiting for the food service to begin. And that's amazing. Let's talk about the seat configurations and the comfort of the seat itself. On my four legs, I had three different airlines with three different configurations. On my first flight, and that was the only time I had this configuration, there was a 1-2-1 configuration where I booked a seat that was close to the window, it was at the window, but then there was almost like a little storage area to my right that I had to walk through to get to my seat. And it was the most private, and I was really looking forward to sleeping on that seat. But the caveat of that seat is that your feet go into a little alcove that fits into the seat in front of you. And when you lie down, you kind of feel like you're in a coffin as opposed to being on a bed. And when I was sleeping at night and I tried to turn over, I lifted my legs really quickly, like I normally do, because I want to turn over. And I ended up kicking my shins on the corners of that little alcove. And it hurt for a couple of days afterwards. And being my first time sleeping on that particular kind of a seat, I wasn't used to the placement of the armrests. And so I banged my elbows a couple of times on the sides of the armrests. And that hurt again for a few days when I landed. So the second and third and fourth legs of my flight, I figured out that, no sudden movements unless you know where your hands and legs are. But on that one flight, I ended up bumping my elbows and my shins of my legs a couple of times. Let's talk about the in-flight experience. Now, of the four legs of my flight, there was one leg that wasn't really good. That was the flight from Istanbul to Mumbai. You see, out of the 5.5-hour flight time, for nearly 3 hours, we had really strong turbulence and services were canceled. So I was lying there on the lay flat bed that wasn't fully made, trying to sleep, where the plane was bouncing up and down, making it obviously very hard to do that. And I was also a little bit hungry because I had not eaten as much as I wanted to when I was at the lounge. But on the other three legs, the service was excellent. The staff was friendly, helpful. There was a little bit of a communication gap sometimes because they spoke Turkish. They spoke English not as a first language. So sometimes I asked for a specific wine and I got a different kind of wine. But that really is a small complaint. Usually they were really helpful and it was great service. The food, which was one of the main draws of the business class experience for me, was outstanding. The longer hauls, the longer flights between Chicago and Istanbul had two meal services, one at the start of the flight and one at the end of the flight. And the first meal of the flight was the one which was the longest. It had 4 courses. They started off with a bowl of warm nuts and a selection of alcoholic and very creative non-alcoholic drinks, followed by appetizers that themselves were really interesting. Things like canapes and raw salmon cakes, I guess that's a better word for it. They also gave us this special bread that is made of the oldest strain of grain in the area. So that was interesting. But by the time the appetizers were done, I almost forgot about the main course, which I had ordered at the start of the flight. And then by that point, I was stuffed. And then just when I thought everything was done and the food service was going to go away, they came around with desserts. And for one of my flights, I had ice cream and walnut baklava, and that was all I could have because I was so stuffed. And there were so many other things I could have had, like different kinds of baklava. There was also cake as a snack that I could have had, but I just had no room to have that much food. They give you a 1 gigabyte per flight free Wi-Fi, and you can buy additional Wi-Fi for about $35. When you connect to the Wi-Fi, immediately turn on low data mode. when I was trying to join Zoom calls, I had absolutely no problems connecting. And I was even able to make WhatsApp calls to my family, all at 35,000 feet. It was amazing to feel so connected and have so much data on tap. Depending on the plane you get, you might get a normal bathroom, or you might get a nice one that is a little bit better than what you'd normally get in economy. The Istanbul lounge, I would say the major thing about it is it's all about the food. There's these chefs making all kinds of food, from gozlemiz to pita bread to Indian food to Chinese food. There's coffee stalls. There's a barista working extremely quickly to make all kinds of espresso-based drinks at one counter. There's even someone, and this is not food, but there's actually someone ironing clothes. If you want to iron a suit or something, you can actually have that done for free. I saw people getting chair massages, or like while they were sitting at their chair. So that's probably something that's free as well, but in short supply. I tried out the showers. The showers are pretty good. Let's talk about Touristanbul. Touristanbul is a free tour of Istanbul, and there's about 5 to 7 different options that you can choose depending on when you land and how long you have in your layover. So if you're flying Turkish Airlines, you can head to the Touristanbul desk and choose one of these tours. And that's what I did. So as soon as my plane landed, which was about 7 a.m., I did a slow jog to the airport. I got through the fast track line at the passport control, which was very quick. And I made it to the Touristanbul desk, which is close to the exit of the airport, in 10 to 15 minutes, which is pretty good. So that's around 7:45, 7:30 a.m., maybe a little earlier than that. And I made it well ahead of the 8 a.m. deadline for the 8:30 half-day tour, which I wanted. So I got my number from that machine, and then I waited for my number to get called, and I told them I wanted to be part of the 8:30 half-day tour. Then I waited for about an hour for the tour to start. The tour began as planned. They walked us down to there's an elevator, an escalator that you go down, and then there are these buses waiting. So they put us on a bus. The bus took us, it was quite a comfortable bus. The tour guide introduced herself and told us a little bit about the tour. We headed to a nice looking restaurant overlooking the Bosphorus. That's that little strait that separates the two continents of Turkey, the Asia and the European side. And the breakfast was free. And that's about the best part of the breakfast. The breakfast itself was not very special. There was a hard-boiled egg, a couple of slices of cheese, some olives, a little bit of water, and tea. But it was free, and it was pleasant. Then the bus took us another 30, 40 minutes or so and took us to Taksim Square, which is where we began our tour. So far, so good. We walked on Istiklal Street. We looked at a couple of Orthodox churches, which was something I hadn't seen before in Turkey the last time I visited. So that was nice. Then I left the tour group and headed to Hafiz Mustafa to get these really expensive but very, very nice Turkish sweets, because I had my mind set on getting those from Hafiz Mustafa. And just as I was walking back to the tour group, a thunderstorm hit. We're talking a heavy downpour, lightning and thunder, torrential rain. The ground got flooded, water started flowing, drenching my shoes, which were waterproof, but not really waterproof if the water goes above your shoes. My jeans got soaked. My jacket that I was wearing got soaked. The passport in my backpack came this close to getting soaked. My laptop came close to getting soaked. Everything else got wet, like my money, some papers I had in the front of my backpack all got wet. And then at that point, nobody wanted to spend time looking at Galata Tower. So as soon as we met our tour guide back again. Everyone said, let's just get back on the bus. But even so, it took us about 40 minutes for the bus to get there and then another 45 minutes to get back to the airport. And the lesson is, the takeaway from this is, Touristanbul is normally excellent, it's normally wonderful, and it's free. But if you see rain or snow on the forecast, just skip it. Don't do it. Stay at the airport, hang around at the airport. And if you really want to get out, take an Uber. Go to the Grand Bazaar, walk around indoors, and then if it stops raining, you go peek outside. And if it starts raining, you come back in again. Hang out at a cafe, go to a restaurant. Don't do what I did and get stuck in a fixed tour route, waiting for someone to take you back to the airport, waiting for the rain to stop. In terms of the Istanbul Airport, just keep in mind it's a massive single terminal airport with 5 spokes, almost like a snowflake. Each snowflake spoke is about a half-kilometer walk from start to finish. And then there's a central shopping area that's like a giant high-end mall with prices between 1.5 to 2 times of what the same thing would sell outside of the airport. So if you wanted to buy sweets or alcohol at the airport, you're looking at spending a significantly higher amount of money than if you just took an Uber outside of the airport and bought the stuff from outside the airport. So final verdict, right? Would I do it again? Would I spend $2,700 for a business class ticket, over $900 for an equivalent economy ticket? And the answer is yes, I would do it again if I was traveling solo and I found a similar deal. And this is why. There was 0 jet lag on return. I was completely rested when I landed in Chicago. I could have gone straight to work. That never happens to me when I fly economy. I'm usually sleepy for at least a day or 2 afterwards. The food was an experience. It made the flight seem less of a drag. It wasn't about sustenance. It was about enjoying the experience. The crew was great. The lounges were excellent. Everywhere I went, there were shorter lines that made the journey smooth at every single touch point. The lie flat seats, it transformed a normally exhausting, butt-hurting experience of being squished in those really small chairs for 24 hours into something restful. Now that alone might justify the price differential if you're flying solo and you need to function when you land. But then again, here's the reality. At nearly 3 times the price of economy, this is a luxury for me. Traveling with my family is not really doable at that price point. So if I'm flying solo, I definitely consider this again at the same price point.